Street fighting and Israeli bombardment rocked Gaza's far southern Rafah a day after Israeli tanks rolled into the center of the city near the Egyptian border. The twin strikes blamed on Israel has claimed over 60 lives, but the U.S. says that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has not crossed the red line yet. Our next report tells you more.
A week marked by severe violence in Gaza has captured global attention. A civil defense official from Gaza reports that an Israeli airstrike on a displacement camp west of Rafah killed at least 21 people on Tuesday. This follows an airstrike on Sunday, which killed 45 people, igniting global condemnation. Israel has denied responsibility for the latest strike, while Israeli Prime Minister calls Sunday's attack a tragic mishap.
We've heard this called a tragic mishap, a mistake. I guess the question is, what then to call the ferocious attacks that have killed thousands and thousands of children? How do we describe the actions that have pushed an entire population to starvation?
The United States has been among the countries urging Israel to refrain from a full-scale offensive into Rafah. But Washington says that Israel is yet to cross President Joe Biden's red lines.
We still don't believe that a major ground operation in Rafah is warranted. We still don't want to see the Israelis, as we say, smash into Rafah with large units over large pieces of territory. We still believe that, and we haven't seen that at this point. But we're going to be watching this, of course, very, very closely.
Israel's military operations have only intensified in blatant defiance of condemnations. Tanks and ground forces have mounted raids deep into Rafah's neighborhoods. Fierce street battles have raged as Hamas militants fight back with rockets and gunfire against the Israeli soldiers. Northern Gaza too has been punished severely, with tanks shelling residential areas and Israeli forces thrusting into the massive Jabalia refugee camp. On the other hand, South Africa seems poised to continue its push at the International Court of Justice. A request for the UN Security Council to intervene is also on the cards. Now, many Israelis too are openly criticizing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
I think that the Prime Minister is not just wrong. I think that he pushes it because of reasons which are not in line with what we consider to be the national interest and security interest of the State of Israel, and particularly not the interest of saving Israelis that are held by these murderers and killers, and we may lose them.
A steady stream of civilians has been fleeing Rafah, the new hotspot in the grueling war. UN says 1 million have fled the area. The big question is when and how the war will end. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
We are now being joined by retired Colonel Rich Outzen from Washington, D.C. He is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and the Jamestown Foundation as well. Rich, great to see you and thank you for joining us. The White House says that Israel is yet to cross President Biden's red lines. What exactly are these red lines?
Well, good to be with you, Susan. This White House is notorious, I would say, for its mismanagement of the concept of red lines and escalation dynamics. We've seen sort of red lines posited but not clearly identified or enforced with regards to Ukraine, certainly with regards to Iranian malign activity in the Red Sea and elsewhere, and with regards to Hamas. In this case, it's a red line posited with regards to an ally, not an enemy in Israel. So I think what we can infer is that the Biden administration is looking very carefully at domestic public opinion in the United States. And the red line really is anything that would inflame the left wing of the Democratic Party. And I think by that they mean something that gives the impression of indiscriminate force. So as long as the Israelis do what they need to do in terms of taking down Hamas, but avoid the appearance of indiscriminate force, I think that's the best that we can really say is a red line. Of course, a red line has value when it's big, bold, bright, and red so that everybody knows exactly what it is. So they've sort of failed the conceptual test here.
Yeah, so true. And Rich, also Israel's prime minister said that the death of 45 people killed in Israeli strikes were a tragic mishap. However, the IDF refutes the claim that 21 people died on Tuesday. So the question many are asking, and I was wondering if you can provide some insight for us, do we know who killed the 21 people in Gaza?
Not with great certainty. And my understanding is that this may or may not have been an airstrike. It may have been related to ground activities such as the use of tanks and heavy equipment. I want to start by saying, having viewed this sort of situation in Iraq and elsewhere, fighting among civilian population is a terribly dangerous and difficult task, even when a military force is being or trying to be very discriminate and trying to be very careful and professional. So I have some empathy for the Israeli forces involved here. They've been given a very difficult task, and Hamas is fighting under, around, and behind civilians. That said, the Israeli record of acknowledging in a timely fashion when it has had a mishap, when it has resulted in civilian deaths, has not been great. If you look at the Shireen Abu Akleh episode and others, there's been times where they have caused civilian deaths and then sort of declaimed it or refused responsibility early on. I would not at all be surprised, given the fact that combat operations are happening in these tent city areas, if this was also a tragic mishap. It's just impossible to tell until 24, 48 hours of the news cycle pass and more data comes to light.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all of that. Rich Outzen joining us from Washington, D.C. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon as we follow this story closely.
Thank you, Susan.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.